Good morning. Let's try. Not enough caffeine. Good morning. Much better. Thank you for the invitation to join you. I'd like to start with a preview of the conclusion because I promised both Bill and Glenn that if need be, I would shorten my talk in order to keep the overall program on board. So here's the three key conclusions of the talk. First of all, in the next 3 years, US Ignite must look to scale. And scale means both using the network for a national program as well as deepening the scaling of the US Ignite projects inside the US Ignite cities. Again, number one, scale. Number two, key takeaway from my perspective is that we have an opportunity to celebrate today the 5th year of the U.S. National Broadband Plan, a call to build out infrastructure across the country. So too must we take time today as part of our US Ignite activities to realize that it's an and statement when it comes to the work of the National Broadband Plan and the work of US Ignite. Again, a set of programs that actually all had the same origins in terms of time frame and vision. And the time has come in the next period of time to actually bring those big arcs of activity together. And the third key takeaway, the third conclusion, is that none of this happens in decisions that are made exclusively inside the Beltway. That is to say, this is not a series of projects that can be both declared in Washington and therefore be implemented in Cleveland or Chattanooga or in Montgomery County or any of the other US Ignite cities that are part of the joining here. This really is a need for continued leadership by you, and those are the three key conclusions I want to make sure that I get to today. So as Bill indicated, OneCommunity has been around for about a dozen years, an early pioneer in an effort that helped to both provide a actual proof point for many of the R&D activities outlined in the National Broadband Plan of 2010. When it came to thinking about how cities could partner and create priorities that were not just about the work of universities or the priorities of the community, but actually how to create an and both statement. How could we actually take the work of a great research university and connect it to the priorities of the community? And that actually gave rise to OneCommunity about a dozen years ago in a series of projects that unfolded. But as I already mentioned, the truth is, at the same time as the proof point of in the R&D space, in the chapters in the National Broadband Plan were coming together, so too was work that was being pioneered across the country in trying to actually inspire ideas on how networks could actually be developed and deployed to have impact, compelling impact on the community around us. And that was very much part of the initial vision of the sort of workup to the launch of US Ignite, which of course is officially about 3 years old. The truth is, as we were talking here, and thanks to a group of people, some of whom are here, people like Susie Iacono from NSF, Nick Maynard from OSTP, John P. at the time, FCC to OSTP. At the same time as the National Broadband Plan was getting going, so too was the question, what will we do with the network when it's built? A fundamental question. And a convening that happened, again, June of 2010 was the first sort of conversation that led to a launch in January of 2011. That's part of this longer conversation, but always thinking about how we could actually have impact in our own communities by leveraging the inspiration of building out the next networks. I want to very, very briefly kind of hit on some of our experience in Cleveland, some of which I think is replicable, some of which I think is unique to the Cleveland experience, and some of which I'll hopefully learn from you as well through the next day and a half of conversations. Thanks to creative work at OneCommunity and in partnership with the City of Cleveland and our PBS station and Case Western Reserve University, we actually said, what does Cleveland really have a challenge right now? Among the many challenges we have, no, it's not LeBron James coming back to Cleveland, that's not the, no, it's not the RNC. What is our real challenge is actually figuring out how to engage in a serious economic redevelopment activity. We're going to hear later this afternoon on a conversation on creating innovation zones. We went to the EDA, EDA here in DC and said, listen, Cleveland's future economic pipeline is connected to our health and technology communities. We are a health mecca, and yet we don't actually have an ecosystem and a place to actually declare a health tech innovation zone. And that gave rise to a successful EDA grant for just about $1.1 million to actually build out a 3-mile innovation zone, building out the nation's first commercially available metropolitan 100-gig network. And it's already had really, I think, really important impacts on the community. Just to kind of give you one simple example, just in the last couple of weeks, the PBS affiliate that was one of our partners in the EDA grant had to actually do the broadcast of President Obama's visit to Cleveland. And for whatever set of circumstances, the satellite truck that they had arranged for, because after all, how do you do broadcasts with a satellite truck? Couldn't actually get line of sight to the bird that it needed to see in the sky. And it literally at the last hour, and it all happened, I think Nick can tell us if I get this wrong, it all happened within 3 days from the time the White House said yes until he was in Cleveland at the City Club. We got an urgent call. Is there anything we could do? You guys have this 100 gig after all. And we said, yeah, we actually can. Dark fiber between the City Club and the Convention Center back to the PBS station. And first time ever, the PBS station actually broadcast live over fiber, across the state of Ohio, the president's visit, which then instantly led the Convention Center to say, wow, this is amazing. We thought we'd have to have satellite trucks. The RNC is coming to town, and we're going to have 15,000 journalists. It's something that you guys at OneCommunity could do to actually create this fiber solution for all of them. It could be amazing. And literally within about 2 days, we received a request for 144 fibers between the Convention Center and the Media Center for the RNC. So economic development impact, why this matters is because some of it is serendipitous that falls on top of the idea of using fiber and networks to create applications that are compelling to the community's priority without simply putting an iron box around it to say nothing else can happen. Here's a case in point already where I think really interesting things are going to happen. So again, the partnership, our story is always around partnerships. This is a 3.2 mile project of the City of Cleveland's Economic Development Group, OneCommunity. As I say, there are 17 brownfields up and down this line. Our goal is actually to open it up. Our first anchor institutions that are coming online are noted here. These are some of the folks who are ready to come on board the 100 gig enabled network. We hope to have the first sort of official lighting of the network later this year in 2015, and definitely before the RNC arrives, because now we've promised them 100 gigs for the RNC as well as the fiber services. So that's a really big deal in terms of the activities. There's that convention center up in the upper left-hand corner there, and again, an effort to bring in and create a strategy for the community to use fiber and to use our application ecosystem around an economic development strategy. So that's one interesting piece of it. The other kind of area is to take a look at how then do you develop an set of applications that takes advantage of gig network infrastructure. And for those of you who've been kind of through several of the visits either to Cleveland or heard me or others from OneCommunity talk, we oftentimes talk about the story of Surgical Theater, a Cleveland-based company that actually uses 3D simulation of patient-specific information that comes from MRIs of patients who are actually going in for high-risk surgeries, typically in this particular case for brain surgery, for aneurysms kind of activity. And this was all, I've told this story, in fact, Nick will probably remember this. I think I told this story 4 years ago. What's different now? Here's what's different. We're now using the network across the country to actually create an opportunity for extremely high-risk surgeries. This is a neurosurgeon at UCLA, one of the world's best neurosurgeons, had a very, very high-risk brain surgery he had to do, in which The patient had been turned away from multiple surgeons. Can't be done. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. And they only have, at the best of time, about 10 minutes to go in and to actually find a way into the aneurysm, to choose from over 100 clips to actually close off the aneurysm. And Martin, who happens to be a good friend of the chief of neurosurgery at Case Western Reserve's University Hospital, said, listen, Warren, we're both using surgical theater inside our institutions. How about we do the demonstration in real time? Because I've got a patient who I'd really like, well, I'm in surgery. I want you to help me figure out whether or not the path that I'm doing through the brain, through literally what was smaller than half of a straw, is how Neil declared it. I need to make sure that this is going well. So in real time, they actually brought up the scan of the patient while, in fact, Neil was doing the surgery, and, in fact, Dr. Selman, who heads neurosurgery at Case. That's part of that scale and replication issue that we have to be working on. Deep inside the community, like an economic development project. Also, applications start thinking about not only what we can do in our communities, but to start thinking about what we can do between our communities. A second kind of example, connected collaboration is a project that my colleague Marv Schwartz has been pioneering and championing for us with NSF support over a period of time. Really, the idea here is to be focusing in on developing next generation collaboration services using video, in which the central idea is not to have very complicated infrastructure between the endpoints in a multi-point conversation, but rather to use the network to support collaboration and actually allow for multiple endpoints to take advantage of gig networks along the way. So a really extraordinary set of demonstrations that we've done inside the city of Cleveland. And Marv's working on a series of them right now. But here's the challenge, and a number of you I've been in touch with on this one. The time has come, ladies and gentlemen, to actually create a national program leveraging the US Ignite cities to attend to a national priority, which also is a local priority, which is STEM-educated children. And so, I mean, just taking a look at the sort of, again, overlay of the US Ignite cities with the Genie infrastructure that's out there, now is the time to design a national program, especially for the T in STEM, to actually work together to say we all have a challenge, and let's use that Genie infrastructure as our open lab. Let's actually use it to actually teach people not only how to work it inside their communities, but by creating virtual teams from the get-go to try to actually make this kind of infrastructure valuable not just to the R&E community, but to the backyards of the R&E community, the schools that are responsible for helping the pipeline that the nation needs in terms of that effort. So it's a call out for any city involved in US Ignite that would like to partner with us. We have an NSF grant that we are proposing. There are a number of cities who've already signed up to join us in that adventure, using existing infrastructure to pull together a collaboration to advance real-time interactive, using connected collaboration, real-time interactions between young people, teachers, professional development for teachers, and informal science educators in your communities, all partnering together if possible. Just briefly then, just two other kind of points I want to share with you in terms of the sort of opportunities that we see going forward. I think one of the other sort of highlighted priorities in the national picture, if you think about the national broadband plan, you know, I've hit on education, I've hit on healthcare. Another big piece of it is sort of looking at advanced manufacturing. Another really important activity set that typically takes place only in the context of the local economy. And again, in Cleveland, we're working quite a bit in this area of trying to get our very big brands that are analog manufacturers to get into the digital age in a very big way, and to try to use the network as a transport system for both delivering services as well as for inventing new opportunities that are there. And so again, a kind of challenge to, I think, to all of us here is to think about what we could be doing next. And we've decided to create a riot in Cleveland. We think that that's what it's going to take. It's really trying to take a look at the language that is now in play around IoT and say, right, the goal is actually to figure out how to realize IoT inside our community, leveraging all of the network infrastructure that is there, And although typically we think of IoT as not requiring significant amount of bandwidth, ladies and gentlemen, 5 years from now, if I ever get an invitation to come back here, I'm going to fully declare victory. I told you so. IoT is going to end up being a massive bandwidth consumer, and more importantly, whether it's big bandwidth or not, the amount of our world that is going to live in the networks that are designed for the future, even if you discount the analysts by 50% in terms of what they're saying, somewhere north of 90% of all the things in the world that can be connected remain to be connected. So our work has just begun, and almost all of that is happening in the world of IoT. And so our goal is, and your goal, I think, as US Ignite Cities, is to think about what is the IoT agenda for the nation in the public interest? Because those corporations will take care of themselves, thank you very much. And unfortunately, those ecosystems are going to be necessarily, for another conversation, they will be closed systems. They will not be open systems. Our opportunity is to use the US Ignite Cities infrastructure and the Genie Rack infrastructure that many of us have, and hopefully more of us will have going forward, to actually think about how to create IoT infrastructure that is actually serving the public good. And so I've certainly been blogging on it. Others have been talking about it. I think it's a great opportunity for collaboration among the US Ignite Cities. It's one of those things that actually wasn't anticipated. Just tells you 5 years ago when the National Broadband Plan was written, we didn't have the language of IoT. 5 years from now, if we don't actually saddle up to this, then, because it wasn't in the broadband plan, shame on us. This is really a huge opportunity to figure out how to actually take a look at IoT for purposes. Just a couple quick examples here, and I'm right on time, so I'll keep you guys. I promise to keep them, get them back on schedule. Just last weekend, we actually had an Olympiad of 73 girls ages 13 to 18 in a very different hackathon. They actually were working on IoT for public value. An event that was held, a very diverse group of young girls, all working on those national purposes. A fascinating set of examples where the winners ended up winning on issues around human health. It was a very big play. Also, actually, a very interesting set of interventions around depression. And a third one was around memory care for seniors. All developed by 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds in a competition along the way. Obviously trying as best as we can also to work with our public transit, which is one of the things that is called out in the National Broadband Plan, and it's something that a number of people have criticized the Broadband Plan for having not catalyzed enough talk about smart public applications. I mean, if you read Larry Downs' piece in the Post yesterday, it's something that he calls out. The Broadband Plan apparently has been incredibly successful, except for these public benefit opportunities. This is a chance for us, because we all live in cities, to actually not only do good work for our cities, but also collaboratively together. And I think somehow in this ecosystem of very, very significant, maybe limitless possibility that is out there, the challenge that we have and the opportunity that we have is to realize that it actually doesn't happen just because the infrastructure is there. It actually takes leadership of every one of you in the cities that you represent, the communities that you represent, to balance out and create an and both statement, to both advance the priorities as identified in big projects like the National Broadband Plan, and at the same time attend to the priorities that actually matter inside your community. And that is a project worth aspiring towards. Thank you.